Hello, in this introductory lesson we'll talk about the main concepts related to evaluation, assessment, and testing. First of all, it is important to think about our perceptions concerning evaluation. And I have some questions for you here. The first one is, how do your teachers evaluate you? The second one is, what is the thing that you hate the most about taking tests? The third question is, what is your opinion about this teacher evaluation that you conduct every semester where you give opinions about your teachers? Next question is, how do your teachers test your English language ability? And finally, what do you think your grades represent? So here, what we can say about these questions is that there are different ways in which teachers can assess your performance in a course. Some of them would use exams, some others will probably use oral presentations, some others will ask you to write a text, some others will ask for portfolio. So it is important to see that there are different ways in which we can measure the students' performance and then make decisions about their grades. Now, the second question leads you to the fact that sometimes there are things that you do not agree with concerning exams. That is, that sometimes you don't think exams are fair, sometimes you don't think the results are valid or reliable, and therefore it is important to find ways to make evaluation and testing more accurate. About the third question, what we can say is that when the teacher's performance is assessed, that means that the students give opinions about their teachers, but no decisions are made to improve the teacher's performance. In fact, the results of this can be useless. If we perform evaluation, it is because we want to improve things. So after a teacher evaluation, or after the students have given their opinions about the teachers, there should be some decisions that should be made. For example, promoting or recognizing the work of the teachers who are doing a good job, and probably, providing training or assistance for those teachers who do not seem to be doing a good job. Now, about the second to last question, we can see, of course, that language ability is very complex, so any English test should include everything related to assessing speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and all of the different sub-skills related to the language. And finally, we can say that if your grades are related to the real performance that you have in the course, or to the level of learning that you acquire, the grades will mean something. But sometimes the grades are just numbers that do not really represent what you can do in a given course. That means that they do not reflect your level of performance. So it is very important, and that's what this course is for, to help you know everything that is related to evaluation, assessment, and testing, and then of course help you to make the right decisions. Now, once that we have opened this discussion about evaluation, assessment, and testing, it is very important, of course, to make a difference between these three related but very different terms. The first thing that we need to see is that evaluation is a very important step in any kind of model for curriculum development. That is, that in any kind of educational program or language program, there is a component of evaluation. Let's look at some of them. This is from 1983, Yalden. We can see that there is evaluation. The second model, Riches and Rogers, 1986, we can see that also evaluation is a very important part of curriculum development. We go to Noonan, 1988, we will see there is also evaluation as part of a language program. Later on, we can also see Brown 1995 that shows that evaluation is a component that is related to all of the elements in a language program. Same happens with Dudley, Evans, and St. John. We can see in this case that there's an interrelation between evaluation and other curriculum components. We go to Richards 2001, we will see that there is also evaluation as part of the process of curriculum development. If we go to the latest model of curriculum development by Richards 2018, we will see that in both his backward and forward curriculum design processes, he includes assessment as an important element. So, the next step is now to make a difference and a clear distinction between evaluation, assessment, and testing. Let's look at the definition of evaluation first of all. Now we can define evaluation as the systematic gathering and analysis of all relevant information for the purposes of decision making. This means that evaluation can be made on a whole program, that means on the curriculum, the syllabus, the objectives, the materials, or everything that is in the program, but also it can be performed on the individuals within the program. That means the administrators, the teachers, the students, everybody. The analysis of this information and the information itself can be quantitative or qualitative. So what I want you to notice here is that evaluation must be systematic first of all. We shouldn't do things, intuitively or in a random way. It has to be systematic. And also, we must analyze all kinds of information, right? So this means that if we want to look at a person's performance, we have to look at it from different points of view. And also that when we do evaluation, it's because we want to make decisions. Normally, we want to improve something. So these are the three most important elements of evaluation: systematic, all kinds of relevant information, and finally, for the purpose of decision making. Now, what kind of decisions can be made about a program? For example, a curriculum. We can probably change the kind of courses that there are or the order of the subjects that there are in a program, for example. Concerning the facilities and equipment, we can see if the facilities are appropriate for teaching, if the classrooms are in good conditions, if there's enough equipment, if the equipment is in good conditions, if it is updated, and so on. Same thing about materials. We can see if the materials that we're using are appropriate or not. Concerning the syllabus of a course, we can see if the content that we're teaching is relevant or not. About the students, of course, there are lots of decisions that can be made. Some of them are related to the fact that they should probably pass or fail the course, or maybe that they should be selected for participating in different kinds of scholarships or programs and so on. Same thing for the teachers. If we evaluate the teachers, we can make decisions about what kind of training or what kind of updating they should get. And finally, about administrators, we can see if they're doing a good job, if they're taking into account the opinions and the interests and the needs of all of the participants in the program. So evaluation is very important because it allows us to make decisions and to improve everything that is in a program. Now let's look at the second concept. Once that we have seen that evaluation is the systematic collection of all relevant information for the purposes of making decisions, let's see what we can do to make those decisions. First of all, we need to carry out some kind of assessment of our measurement. That means that if we're evaluating teachers, we need to compare the teachers, we need to measure the teachers' performance. So assessment is the process of quantifying the characteristics of persons according to explicit procedures and rules. So this means that when we want to evaluate two teachers, for example, to see who of them is going to get a job or a promotion, we need to measure their performance. We need to see who of those teachers is the best one. And to do that, we need to quantify the characteristics, in this case, teaching performance or teaching effectiveness, right? And we have to do it according to explicit procedures and rules. So in this case, for measurement, we can use instruments such as rankings, to see what teachers have like better qualifications. We can use rating scales, like the ones that are used in the PEVA questionnaires. When you do the teachers evaluation, normally you have rating scales. They ask you questions about your teachers, and you have to select numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where number 1 is the lowest and number 5 is the highest, and then you can give your opinion about your teachers. In a similar way, a Likert scale is one that asks you if you agree or disagree with something, and in this way you can give opinions about your teachers. And finally, the teacher performance can also be measured by means of tests or lessons or presentations. Okay, so when we want to assess something, we're going to use different kinds of instruments. The example was about teacher performance, but we can also use the effectiveness of a textbook using exactly the same procedures. So the last thing that I want you to look here is that a test is a kind of assessment instrument. But let's see what exactly a test is. Now, a test is a procedure that is designed to elicit certain behavior from which one can make inferences about certain characteristics of an individual. This is the first definition by Carroll in 1968. Now we can see here that if I'm going to test you, the first thing that I need to do is that I have to ask you to do something. That means to elicit behavior. And then based on the things that you're going to do, I can make inferences about whether or not you have a high performance on the characteristic that I'm measuring, right? A very simple example would be, I want to see how good an athlete you are, and I can ask you to run 100 meters and see how fast you can run, if you get tired or not, and based on this, I can make inferences about your sport performance, right? Now, this will be like kind of test, but of course there are language tests, there are all kinds of tests. Now, another definition that is more updated by Richards and Schmidt is that a test is any procedure that is used for measuring, okay, you can see the key word here, measuring ability, knowledge, or performance. So this means that in this case, just to make a difference between assessment and testing, an assessment is, I'm going to ask the students what they think about their teachers, and then the students give their opinions. They calculate whether or not they think the teachers are good. But if I give the teachers a test, in this case, this test is going to try to measure their teaching or the language ability, their knowledge, or their performance as teachers. So there is a big difference between assessment and testing. Assessment is just measuring somebody's performance using some observations or some opinions. But a test is an instrument that is going to try to measure the actual level of ability that a person has to perform a certain task. So just to summarize, evaluation is a large, most general concept in which we want to get information in order to make decisions about a person or about an element in our language program. And then, of course, because we want to make a good decision, we need to assess, we need to measure the quality or the characteristics of people or the things in our program. So we can use, as part of this assessment process, some kind of testing so that we can see, in the case of people, if they are competent enough, if they have the abilities or the skills required to do their job. So when we want to use evaluation, we could use interviews or diaries, conversations with people, focus groups, which are collective interviews. And this kind of information is going to be qualitative because we cannot measure this information. When we talk to somebody in an interview, or we read a diary, or we have conversations, we cannot change this into numbers. So it is not quantitative, it is qualitative. But on the other hand, if we use some kind of observation forms with numbers, some kind of scales that can be frequency or rating or Likert scales, we're going to look at this in detail a little bit later, okay? But all of these are quantitative because they can be transformed and they actually use numbers. So everything that we can analyze in terms of numbers is going to be quantitative information. And of course, a test is usually quantitative. When you take a test, you get a score, and this score is given in terms of numbers. So it is quantitative. So then this is a summary of what evaluation and assessment and testing are. Evaluation is more general. We want to make decisions. In order to make decisions, we need to measure something, and to measure something, we're going to use different instruments. Some of them will be qualitative, as these ones, interviews, diaries, conversations, and so on, and others will be quantitative. And we can see that testing is a very special kind of assessment instrument because it helps you to measure somebody's performance or ability in a certain characteristic. So qualitative include non-numerical data, and quantitative include numbers. So just to review this information, you're going to turn now to Classroom, where there's an activity in which you will see what should be done in each case. That means you need to determine, according to the situation, if we're doing evaluation or assessment or testing. So there are different kinds of situations. We're going to read them, and then you're going to decide which of these is done. For example, number one, we want to know how much students have understood the concepts in the evaluation course. Number two, we want to know what kind of materials are more appropriate for the Lengua Meta courses, because we want to select a new textbook. Number three, we want to determine the skills at speaking, listening, reading, and writing that the students find more difficult. And another example will be, we want to determine the proficiency level of Licenciatura en Enseñanza del Inglés graduates. So please turn to Classroom now. There's a Google form. I want you to read each situation and then decide what is being done in each case. Is it evaluation? That means, are we making decisions? Is it assessment? In this case, are we measuring some characteristics of an object or a person? Or finally, is it testing? Are we administering an instrument in order to measure somebody's level of performance in a particular task? Okay? So good luck with your task, and remember that if you have questions, you can write me a quick message on our chat group on Messenger. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I will be seeing you next time.